Tonight, with the ticket set, the presidential campaigns hit the road. The latest on the 2024 race for the White House. And
we had sandbags, but obviously it wasn't enough, and it never is.
Tropical storm Debby prepares for a second landfall as the drenching rain system continues to bring dangerous flooding to the East Coast. Plus,
they know that Iran has been the #1 instigator of malfeasance across the region.
With the region on edge, the IDF continues its fight against Hamas and Hezbollah and the Iranian threat. All this and much more tonight on Faith Nation. The campaigns of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump go head-to-head on the 2024 trail. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Faith Nation. From the CBN headquarters in Virginia Beach, I'm Wendy Griffith. With just 90 days until the November election, both the Democratic and Republican tickets are moving full steam ahead in hopes of winning over voters in key battleground states. CBN News Washington correspondent Michelle London joins us now with the latest on the campaign trail. Michelle.
Wendy, good evening. Vice President Kamala Harris and new running mate Tim Walz together continuing a busy swing state tour, stopping in Eau Claire, Wisconsin tonight.
Being a Midwesterner, too, I know a little something about commitment to people. At 17, I joined the Army National Guard. For 24 years, I proudly wore the uniform of this nation.
As Minnesota Governor, Walz has boasted a progressive record of restricting gun access, free breakfast for school children, and sweeping legislation protecting abortion and reproductive rights. In the coming weeks, Minnesota is expected to advance a bill expanding paid family and sick leave across the state. Meanwhile, his opponent, J.D. Vance, spoke at a rally in Michigan today, joined by members of law enforcement. He promised voters to cut down on the flow of illegal migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border, empower police officers to get criminals off the streets, and make housing more affordable. He also challenged Walz's combat experience.
When the United States of America asked me to go to Iraq to serve my country, I did it. I did what they asked me to do it, and I did it honorably, and I'm very proud of that service. When Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him, a fact that he's been criticized for aggressively by a lot of the people that he served with.
Now, Vance also spoke to supporters in Wisconsin today. His next rally is set for Friday in Montana. Meanwhile, Harris and Walz's swing state tour continues in Michigan and Nevada. Wendy?
Thank you, Michelle. Missouri Representative Cori Bush will soon be out of her job in Congress. The progressive Democrat lost her primary to St. Louis County Prosecutor Wesley Bell. Bush has been critical of Israel's war against Hamas and accused Israeli officials of genocide. She's the second member of the squad to go down in a primary defeat. New York Congressman Jamal Bowman, also a critic of the Gaza war, lost his seat in June. Those high-profile losses reflect a growing divide in the Democrat Party over support for Israel. CBN chief political analyst David Brody is here now for more on this. David, let's start with this primary defeat for squad member Cori Bush. Is this a sign the more progressive wing of the Democratic Party isn't resonating with voters?
Well, that remains to be seen, Wendy. Look, they're a far left, small contingent, but they're vocal. What it does show is that there is money mobilized against folks like Cori Bush and, of course, Jamal Bowman. Folks like AOC and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib are in safer districts, so they're not affected as much. But there's a lot of money in outside groups that are pro-Israel, not just AIPAC, but quite a few others that are actually were formed to take on what they call the anti-Semitic left. So I think what you're seeing is a lot more money in these races, and because the money is coming out to, in essence, get them out of the race in a primary, that's really where the action is right now, the energy.
Yeah, it's interesting. What does this result say, though, about the role the war in Gaza is going to play in this election?
Well, it's going to be huge. Hey, here's an idea. Let's ask Josh Shapiro how that's working out for him. Not doing too well, for sure. Look, let's be honest, that was a main reason why Kamala Harris, if not the reason, but definitely a main reason why Kamala Harris did not choose Josh Shapiro. He is not palatable to the far left, and let's be clear, the anti-Semitic portion of the Democrat Party. And so this is something they're going to have to, wrestle with. And one of the reasons that Kamala Harris did not choose Josh Shapiro is that she was concerned clearly that the far left would go, bonkers over this pick in a bad way, and therefore disrupt the convention coming up in just a couple of weeks. It's the last thing Democrats need. So they have all sorts of PR problems on their hands. And right now, it's something Kamala Harris wants to stay away from.
Turning to the campaign, Kamala Harris's presidential campaign raised $36 million in the 24 hours after choosing Tim Walz as her running mate. Is this a sign that she made the right choice?
I don't know. The money's nice and impressive for her, but then again, the money's been coming in for a while. Obviously, we're going to know the final answer. What's your final answer? The final answer will come in early November when we find out, indeed, whether or not they beat Trump and J.D. Vance. So I'm not convinced that the money is necessarily the key factor to look at here. I think what's more impressive, actually, is what Kamala Harris and Tim Walz did on the stage in Philadelphia on Tuesday night, and what they're probably going to end up doing in the 7-state swing, which is talk about optimism. They look very confident. They look very natural together. And the Trump campaign needs to be concerned.
David, Harris has the momentum going into the Democratic convention this month. How will the Trump team try to take it back?
Well, it should be an easy layup for the Trump team if they stay on message. That would be a memo to Donald Trump. Look, the campaign wants to paint both of them as the most liberal ticket in United States presidential history. And whether or not that's actually accomplished, we'll wait and see. But there's a treasure trove of information. I mean, Wendy, what time does Space Nation end? I've got about 45 minutes to an hour's worth of material here on them. But look, bottom line is, whether it be abortion or whether it be Tim Walz signing a bill that allows tampons in boys' locker rooms, free college and health care for illegals, driver's license for illegals in Minnesota. I mean, look, this thing is ultra liberal big time. The question is, who's going to win the narrative and defining each other? Will Harris and Walz be able to get away with kind of an optimistic message and forget about some of this liberal stuff? Well, that remains to be seen. It's up to Trump's campaign to not only point it out, but hammer that message day in, day out.
All right, David Brody, we always appreciate it. Thanks so much.
You bet.
The Justice Department has charged a Pakistani man with plotting to assassinate politicians and government officials on American soil. The suspect, Asif Merchant, is allegedly tied to Iran. He's accused of targeting Donald Trump and other leaders across the political spectrum in a murder-for-hire plot. U.S. officials say this case is not linked to the attempted murder of the former president last month in Pennsylvania. Tropical storm Debby sitting off the Carolina coast as we speak after dumping massive amounts of rain on parts of the southeast. President Biden today issued an emergency declaration for parts of North Carolina. The governor there warning residents to the dangerousness of this storm, which is set to move back ashore late tonight or early Thursday.
There have already been fatalities reported across Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina, where response efforts are ongoing, and our prayers are with our southern neighbors. Tropical storm warnings and watches have been issued for much of eastern North Carolina, and some voluntary evacuations are underway.
Tuesday, Debby dumped about a foot of rain on the Atlantic shore, drenching Savannah and Charleston. The system also spawning a tornado that touched down north of Charleston, devastating a fast food restaurant. As you can see, people in this Savannah neighborhood carrying their belongings from their flooded homes. Wow. Coming up, the latest on tensions in the Middle East. Faith Nation returns in 2 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. Israel says it can launch a swift response anywhere in the Middle East if Iran and its proxies attack the Jewish state. Israeli officials are also warning Lebanon of the steep price it would pay if Hezbollah retaliates for the killing of a senior commander in the terror group. Senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener is here with more. Tara, tonight the Middle East remains on high alert.
It sure does. Good evening, Wendy. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is urging Israelis to stay calm and composed among threats of an attack, but insists Israel is prepared to play offense and defense. The Israeli military issuing fresh evacuation orders in northern Gaza, which was heavily bombed 10 months ago. Here in Washington, the Biden administration insists the U.S. is engaged in intense diplomacy and that it's communicated to both Iran and Israel that conflict must not escalate. It's also been sending strong messages to Netanyahu not to stand in the way of hostage deal ceasefire negotiations. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Yahya Sinwar, newly appointed as Hamas's political leader after his predecessor's assassination, holds the key to achieving a ceasefire. Sinwar, who plotted the October 7th rampage that killed 1,200 Israelis and foreigners, is Israel's most wanted terrorist. He's believed to be hiding in the Gaza Strip, surrounding himself with some of the 250 hostages taken that day for human shields.
The message that we are sending to everyone is, look, this is obviously a very delicate time for the region. Tensions are high. We are in the final stages, hopefully, of a ceasefire deal, and escalation has the potential to make every problem the region faces worse.
Now, Iran is also promising to strike Israel to avenge the assassination of the political head of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh. But a Washington Post report says Iran may be reconsidering its vow of a harsh reprisal amid strong pressure. Meanwhile, as tensions grow in the Middle East, all eyes are on the U.S. for how it responds to growing threats.
When our allies, the moderate Arab states, look at the United States of America and see our equivocation after October 7th, what are they going to do if we ever need help? And what that does is call into question the efficacy of an American alliance.
Now, as tensions mount, Russian President Vladimir Putin has reportedly told Iran to avoid civilian casualties in any retaliatory attack. That call for restraint could be echoed by many foreign ministers from the 57 countries inside the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Wendy.
Thank you so much, Tara, for that report. For more, let's turn to Michael Ohanlan. He's the Senior Fellow and Director of Research and Foreign Policy with the Brookings Institution. Michael, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Nice to be with you.
Hamas has appointed the mastermind of the October 7th attack as its new political leader. What kind of message does this send, and what does this mean for the direction of the group?
Yeah, it's highly troublesome. And if Hamas was having any thoughts of softening its position or its future approach to Israel and to ceasefire negotiations specifically, this was not the person to elevate. But of course, it's also Israel, in a sense, produced this situation by attacking the political leader last week in Iran, when in fact they knew that whoever was going to replace him might be just as bad or worse. So Haniyeh was at least a known quantity and had been in this so-called political wing for a while, which means he was not as involved on October 7th. I'm not trying to defend either one of these terrorists, but I'm simply saying that you create a conundrum for yourself when you take out one sort of devil you know and replace him with a person who's maybe 2 or 3 times as guilty of murder as the guy he's replacing. So I don't know realistically what can happen, except, of course, no one was going to assume that Hamas would do a deal out of the goodness of its heart. The question is, at what point does Hamas feel like a ceasefire can serve their interests of survival of their leadership, survival of their people, and some kind of progress towards a greater political status for the Palestinians? So those hopes remain. And maybe even Sinwar could do a deal on those terms. I'm skeptical, and I'm a little depressed about it. But of course, you know, you don't have to have someone you like to do a deal. You just have to have someone who sees their own interests being advanced.
Absolutely. Well, Hezbollah and Iran are both promising to attack Israel, and neither say they want a regional war. What kind of strategy do you think Iran and Hezbollah will take here?
Well, historically, what Iran does, of course, is to try to foment low-level violence, covert violence, insurrection, and violence as far away from its own territory as possible. And Iran's pretty good at all those things, unfortunately, as we witness from Iraq to Syria to Gaza and Lebanon and Yemen and beyond. So Iran really doesn't want an all-out slugfest with the United States or Israel. They could probably cause a great deal of hurt for us, but their leadership likes survival, likes being in a country that still functions, and they'd rather have the mayhem be somewhere else. And so that's Iran's perspective. Hezbollah.
Okay, and lastly, and real quick, what are the chances Israel launches a preemptive strike?
I think they're fairly low because I think that would be the straw that broke the camel's back in relations with Washington. One last quick thing on Hezbollah. When they attacked Israel en masse in 2005-06, they wound up suffering enormous retaliation. So I don't think they want to go down that path again. On the other hand, they do want to show solidarity. So they're going to try to find perhaps something that's in their mind just enough to show a great deal of anger and cause Israel a lot more hurt, but not produce all-out war. That's a dangerous kind of game to play, of course, because it's hard to find that level of violence. But my guess is that's where they are mentally.
All right, Michael Ohanlan, we always appreciate your insights. Thanks so much.
Thank you kindly.
We'll be right back after the break. And welcome back. Thousands of Israeli soldiers have been wounded since October 7th, many with life-changing injuries. But as Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl reports, a special visitor recently encouraged them to not let their physical hardships ruin their lives.
When we look different, we are the ones that everyone looks at. And so the fact that we still exist, the fact that we sometimes smile, the fact that we keep on going out there, there are many people who say, wow, if he didn't give up, then I'm not going to give up.
Here at Sheba Medical Center, they've treated many of the soldiers wounded in the war since October 7th. Some have even lost limbs. Today, they had a very special visitor.
Today was amazing to be with the wounded soldiers here. You know, my mom was a nurse, and so I have compassion for the doctors and nurses here as well, ministering to the needs of those here and families affected. I think for such a time as this, it's very important for us to show up and show the support and love and plant seeds of light and faith into everyone here.
International speaker Nick Vujicic told CBN News he felt humbled and inspired after speaking to the wounded soldiers.
I had several conversations with a couple people privately and then also in a small group setting, and it was a time that I think was very encouraging for them deeply, and it's wonderful to see hope in their eyes as well.
It's given me a perspective to see that, okay, everything is okay. I just lost one limb, but if Nick got a career and an amazing family, there's no any reason that I won't get it too.
After serving 91 days fighting inside the Gaza Strip, 23-year-old Omri Rosenblatt was severely wounded while trying to dismantle bombs, and an explosion brought a house down on him.
Actually, all the house got collapsed in house. Like you see, like the movies of the earthquakes in Nepal. This is how it looked.
Although mostly buried under the rubble, Omri managed to signal rescuers. They pulled him out and rushed him to hospital.
The doctor and the team commander and all of my guys was 100% sure, all of them, that I'm not gonna make it.
Although Omri survived, he had severe burns. Doctors amputated his left leg and had to piece together his right leg. Listening to Nick gave him hope.
It gives a lot of motivation because Nick is a great talker and gives a lot of examples from his life. And as an amputee guy, I can feel it closer to me. It's amazing.
Simcha Greeneman is deputy commander of Zaka International, the volunteer search and rescue service heavily involved in treating the wounded and helping recover the dead since October 7th. Greeneman met Nick in the U.S. and helped arrange this special meeting.
We spoke about the whole situation, and we said that we would like to come see the soldiers so he could really give them some courage and strength to continue doing whatever they're doing and to give them a lively spiritual way to live and to continue their life.
Greeneman admired the soldiers' response to Nick's encouragement.
It was beautiful, what they said, and right away how much courage and how much feeling close to him, that he was born that way. But their life changed in the middle of their life by understanding that life never finishes, that life does not end by this. As you can see, beautiful family that he has, wife and kids, and life is beautiful.
Nick wants Israelis to know they are not alone and America is not their savior.
And even though it feels lonely to be Israel right now, I, as a U.S. citizen, am very horrified of generally the West and what we're allowing people to say without really understanding what's going on. We're talking about evil, we're talking about terrorism, we're talking about people that their only mission in life basically is to kill the Jews and the Christians. And I think this is a very important time for the Christians and the Jewish people to come together, to align, to pray.
While Omri doesn't know what's next for him, he says maybe he'll follow Nick's example. He also urges those who hate Israel to think about what they are saying and doing.
We tell a bit about the truth, not only what there is in social media, because all the social media and the media is influenced by money and by those things and by terror and blood money. Please come to Israel. Please come speak with me. I think I'm a really nice guy.
Greeneman says it's encouraging to see people stand with Israel at this time.
Just the hug to know that so many people are behind us as Am Yisrael, getting the support of being there, hugging us. That's something that we can continue doing whatever we're doing with a strong mind and understanding that nothing can stop us, as it says, never again.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Sheba Medical Center, Ramat Gan, Israel.
Well, at first glance, Robert's Western World looks like any other honky-tonk in Nashville, except on Sundays. On the Lord's Day, the bar owned by Jesse Lee Jones serves up worship music, instead of alcohol. It's called the Gospel Hour, led by the Reverend Ron Blakely and a band playing a mix of Christian country and gospel music. The music always accompanied by a brief sermon. Dozens of people attend the unique worship service every Sunday. Good for them. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Faith Nation. We'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.